having trouble filming this video because I couldn't stop laughing. And then the cat crapped on the floor, and yeah, now I can stop laughing. So, way to go, cat. You got me in the perfect mood to do a YouTube video. Just remember, folks, cat crap plus YouTube plus video games equals retro video. So if you're ever having trouble with YouTube video, you know, just make sure your cat's crapped all over the place, you know. It works. So, I have another installment of games Nintenjoel has destroyed, and I'm sticking with a 3 games per episode theme because I don't want to bore you guys. Just going to tell you a little bit about when I beat them, and why I beat them, and why I think they're good enough to be beaten. And with that being said, I'm just going to start. First piece of cat crap I have for you is Super Metroid. And this cat crap is really sticky and messy, and I'm just kidding. Super Metroid is one of the greatest games ever made for Super Nintendo, and when I first got it, I had no idea what I was actually in store for. When I played the original Metroid and Metroid 2 Return of Samus, it was pretty mind-blowing as far as like just being able to go back and forth between places. And it was really cool when you'd get an item and then you'd say, oh hey, that item actually helps me back at that one place, and you kind of go back there and you explore, and maybe you'll find another item that leads you to another place, and that's just kind of the way Metroid works, and it's a really good formula for a video game franchise. I do prefer like the Game Boy Advance games and back. The 3D games are pretty good. I do like the Metroid Prime games, they're not bad, but really I like the 2D platformer, exploring through a 2D you know, dungeon where you can go back and forth. It's very fulfilling to me. And when Super Metroid came out and I first saw just like screenshots of it, I was really blown away. I still remember the commercials actually. And I had to have that game, and it's one of the first games I ever bought for the Super Nintendo, and it really did blow me away. I had no idea what I was in for, and graphically, musically, atmosphere-wise, and gameplay, control-wise, it's just incredible. I mean, you can't pick a better system for controls than Super Metroid. Being able to use all of your buttons really, really well, including the bumper buttons, the left and right buttons, using those to aim your cannon at a 45-degree angle, either up or down, was just amazing. And it really helped gameplay, not hinder it. But at the same time, it didn't help it so much to where it made it easy. Those things were taken into account when they made the game. It's a lot like Demon's Crest. It's not a gimmick that you can be able to shoot your cannon in those directions. It's actually very useful and maybe even needed in the game at some points. Kind of like Demon's Crest with the flying ability. It's not a gimmick, you actually need to use the flying ability, and it's just really well used in the game. It's a very good gameplay mechanic that really adds to the game. On top of that, there's your old favorites like the Morph Ball and you know, the spin jump and the double jump, of course, and the high jump. So there's definitely all kinds of really cool stuff with it. I love the arm cannons. I mean, just getting different lasers every time is just really freaking cool. And the bosses are really cool. I really like fighting the bosses. Graphically, they're really cool. They sound really cool. They put a lot of time into this game, and you can tell it was not one of those games that was rushed. It was one of those games where the developer said, look, we need to make an impact with this game. And they really reached for it, and they really did. I mentioned the music. The music is haunting. I mean, just from literally the moment you press power, Super Metroid overwhelms you with a dark atmosphere that is pretty much unmatched in a Super Nintendo game. The only things that really come close musically for me are going to be Final Fantasy 2 and 3 and maybe like Castlevania 4, which all have amazing, amazing music. But Super Metroid's kind of on a different level. It's not melodic, it's not catchy, it's not friendly to the ears, it's alien, and it's dark and it's dismal, and it makes you feel exactly how you are in the game. It makes you feel alone. And man, they just did a really good job with that. They did a really good job with just making you feel like you are literally the only person that has a chance of taking on all these crazy fucking aliens. And yeah, this game also introduced like the super missiles and the super bombs and, you know, just all kinds of really cool stuff. I really like the variety in worlds. I know it's all one world, but the different parts of the world, like Norfair is still there, it's the fire one, and there's now like an ancient ruins on top that's pretty darn cool. And the part where you're kind of underwater is really freaking cool too. It's a very memorable game. If you beat it once, you're going to remember it and think about it, and it's going to make you want to play it again. The replay value on Super Metroid is really, really, really high. God, I'd say as high as like Lost Vikings or... Geez, I can't even think of many games that have replay value that high on Super Nintendo. Just... I mean, there's definitely a few, Castlevania 4, another one, Pocky and Rocky, but just, its replay value, I think, is probably one of the highest on the system, no joke. Chrono Trigger is another one that's got a really high replay value because of the multiple endings. This one's just got a really high replay value because of how excellent the game is. I actually burned myself out on this game when I had it when I was a young adult because I just played it so much, but it's actually been quite a while since I picked it up, and talking about it's just making me want to play it now. So anyways, that's the first game for you guys, Super Metroid. I'm sure you guys are familiar with it. Not really any of the games here are going to be anything super uncommon, but games that maybe I just share my little bit of insight with you, and maybe people who haven't played it. If you haven't played Super Metroid, it's one of the best games on the system. It's a reason to own a Super Nintendo. Super Nintendo has many reasons to own that console, but Super Metroid, definitely at the top of the list. I'd say Super Metroid, Castlevania 4, and Final Fantasy 3 are like must-have games. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past. Good segue, Legend of Zelda. So the second game I have for you is actually a Legend of Zelda game, but it is for the Game Boy Advance. This is my extremely beat-up copy of the Minish Cap. And Legend of Zelda The Minish Cap is quite an interesting game with quite an interesting twist. And that is the fact that you have this hat, you have this cap, the Minish Cap, and it's a sentient being, it talks to you, and it guides you on your quest, and helps you out a little bit. And it actually casts little like spells for you, and the little spell that it casts for you when you stand on these little tree trunks is he shrinks you down to a tiny little dude. And when Link is in the tiny little dude state, he can visit the Minish people, and the Minish people are little people that live all around Hyrule, and normal people do not see them. They're so tiny. I think also they just can't be seen anyways. But Link can see them, and when he shrinks down to their size, he can interact with them. And a lot of what happens in this game is done at the microscopic level, and it's really cool. There are parts where you go on tiny little creeks with a leaf, but blown up. You're riding on a leaf, and it's like a river kind of. And the mountain scenes are cool. You can like dig through sand and stuff, and there's quite a few new items, and it was just a really interesting twist because you can go to a normal town and visit the normal town and talk to all the shop people and go to people's houses and just interact with people. And then you can shrink yourself down, and there's like a whole new area to explore because you go inside of like, you know, say a little shop, and there's a whole little world inside there too as well. It's kind of like Micro Machines. It's just really cool. I've always liked games where you do things kind of on a small level, like Chip 'n Dale Rescue Rangers, always one of my favorite games for Nintendo. But Zelda Minish Cap is just, you know, fairly normal Zelda gameplay, very much like Link to the Past. It's not far removed from Link to the Past as far as actual sword swinging and management of items and using items and such. The main difference is this tiny little world that you have to explore along with your regular world, and it's just really fun to play and really neat to explore kind of both little worlds. A lot of games deal with two different worlds, like a light world and a dark world. Legend of Zelda: Link to the Past is a good example of that, or Final Fantasy 3 or 7 Saga, where you have a light world and a dark world. This deals with a world that's right in front of your eyes, but it's just tiny, and you can't access it unless you do, you know, this certain little thing, and nobody else can access it but you. the little people, the Minish people, can't access the big world. So it's just a really interesting gameplay mechanic, and it seems to be a Legend of Zelda game that I don't really hear a lot of people talk about. I hear people talk about all the greats, especially Ocarina of Time. What a great game. I'm not knocking that at all. Link to the Past is personally my favorite Zelda game. The first one would probably be my second favorite. And I mean, even the second one seems to get a little bit more love, and that's like a hated game. Yeah, the Minish Cap is something you should not ignore. It's highly recommended, and it's not too horribly expensive. There are definitely some lovers of it, and so the price is up there a little bit. It's not a cheap game by any chance, or by any means, but you can definitely get a copy for a decent price, and I would do so before it goes up in value again. Yeah, Legend of Zelda Minish Cap. Let me know what you think of this game, because I really don't hear many people talk about it. If you have played this game, leave a comment, let me know what you think of it. And if you haven't played it, and you decide to by watching this video, eventually get back to me and let me know what you think of the game, because I think it's just freaking genius. It's awesome. Okay, so last game I have for you guys is a Final Fantasy game, and we're going with big titles this time, Metroid, Zelda, and Final Fantasy, but we're not going with the obvious ones. Never the obvious ones for me, except for Super Metroid. It's probably everybody's favorite, but Final Fantasy IX is definitely not everybody's favorite. Most people are going to say 7 or 8 is going to be their favorite on the PlayStation. And that's not to say that necessarily 9 is my favorite, but it's pretty close up there. Final Fantasy IX is kind of a throwback game. Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII were a little more advanced, especially with the magic system. Especially 8 with the magic system was a little convoluted in my opinion. Final Fantasy VII was a very good mixture. It was a really good game, and probably the contender for best Final Fantasy on PlayStation. The Final Fantasy IX was a throwback. They wanted to do something a little bit more simple with the game. They didn't want to have a convoluted magic system, especially after Final Fantasy VIII is what I'm thinking. And they also introduced a really cool card game, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. But as far as graphically, it's a little more cartoonish, like hand-drawn characters. It reminds me of Legend of Mana for PlayStation, a really good game with a really, really cool art style. And one of the reasons I love that game so much is the art style. Final Fantasy IX is kind of similar, and I know that that art style actually turns some people off. I guess I can understand some anime art style kind of turns me off, even though some people freaking love it. It's just the way it goes. I can understand that. I can also understand them taking a step back from having more complex magic systems to something a little more user-friendly and maybe not as time management necessary, if that makes any sense. 7 and 8 required a lot of management with your materia and whatever it was on Final Fantasy VIII. I can't remember what the magic's called, but there's a lot of managing of your magic with those games and having to do a lot of reorganizing and thinking. And Final Fantasy IX had a system in place where it was I'm at a loss for words. It's unique, first of all, and it's very well used. I don't know how else better to say that other than very well used. It is employed very well. Basically what you have is when you go to a shop or you find an item, you will find, like, say, a sword, and hooked to that sword will be an ability. And that ability will be available to use while you have that item equipped. This could be an item, a sword, you know, a shield, helmet, anything, weapon, armor, anything like that, can have an ability. They don't all have abilities, but a lot of them do. Anyways, while you have this item equipped, or in your possession, you will have that ability. While you are battling, you get AP points, ability points, and that go towards learning these abilities permanently. So say you have a sword on it that has, like, a heal spell, for instance. I don't know if there really are any swords that have heal spells, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, let's say you have a sword that has a heal spell on it. While you have that sword equipped, you have the heal spell no matter what. If you unequip that sword, you do not have the heal spell. However, during battle, you gain AP points. if you get all the AP points required, you will learn that spell permanently and no longer have to have that item equipped to be able to use it, to be able to use the ability, if that makes any sense. It's just a really cool system because basically a lot of the stuff works with other people, and so a lot of the gear is interchangeable with people. Not all of it though, some spells only certain people can learn and stuff like that. But it's really cool. I just like the simplicity of it. It's really neat that you can just buy a sword or find a sword and it's like, hey, I found a new sword. It's more powerful. And not only that, but there's a freaking fire spell attached to it. So now I can learn a fire spell. You know, it's just really freaking cool. On top of that, musically, this is one of the greatest games I've ever heard, personally. I just think the music is almost mystical, it's whimsical. There's a little bit of humor to this Final Fantasy. It's not quite as dark as the other Final Fantasies. Some of the characters are a little more lighthearted, and it's just very nice. It's a nice departure. It's a little bit like Legend of Mana. It's just a fun game, and that's what gaming's all about, right? Having fun. It's not a chore to grind on Final Fantasy IX, nor is it very necessary compared to like older Final Fantasies. Also, there's the card battle. So a lot of Final Fantasy games have some kind of like little side quests or other things that you can do. Like for instance, in Final Fantasy VII, you can visit what is it, Saucer Canyon or whatever. Is that what it's called? I think it's Saucer Canyon. But anyways, the place where you can go gamble and play games and do all kinds of stuff. This game has the card battle system, and randomly in treasure chests, or people will give them to you, or you can win them through battling these cards. And these cards are little monster cards, and they have a little picture of a monster, and it's very much like a collectible card game. So if you like collectible card games, man, this is the game for you. You can literally get lost in just the card game and play it for hours. I have. You could play it for hours and hours until you have every single card. And that's the thing. I think there's enough room for you to have one of every card in the game, and that's it. You can have, whatever it is, 200 cards of all the same one if you really wanted to, but you can have up to a certain amount, and that amount is exactly how many cards are available in the game. So getting every single one is a crazy task, and something that I've never even attempted. But basically, you can go around to towns and kingdoms and stuff, and you can talk to people in a normal fashion. But if you press, I don't remember what button it is, like the square button, instead of pressing your normal execute button to talk to somebody, you press like square or something like that, or circle, and if they are a card player, they will respond to you. And they'll say, you want a match? And you say yes, and bam, you bust out your cards. You pick out 5 cards, I believe, and basically you lay them down on a, oh god, I want to say a 4x4 grid. I don't remember the size of the grid. I should have studied a little more. Maybe it's on the back. No, it's not. It's like a 4x4 grid, I think, or maybe a 3x3 grid, or maybe even more. I'm not really sure. But you place your cards on this grid, and they interact and battle with each other depending on where they lie, and they have little arrows on each corner of the card. And if it has an arrow here, it can attack this way. If it has an arrow here, it can attack and block this way. And they have different strengths and weaknesses. And basically, if you defeat an enemy, if you defeat an opponent with your cards, you get one of their cards. If you do a perfect sweep and kill all of their cards on the board, you get all the cards they played with. Now that happens to you as well, so if you put out 5 cards and all of your cards are destroyed in the game, that person in real life gets to take your cards. All of them. Well, all the ones that you played, those 5 cards. So there is a risk element for sure, because you can have your best card taken from you in no time. No time flat. You can be totally confident because you're saying this card is stronger than every other card, and if you place them wrong on the table and there's a couple cards attacking you, that one card can get overwhelmed and you can lose it. And if you lose it, so basically, alright, so when you win a match, you get to choose the card from that pile that you get to take, or like I said, if you do a clean sweep, you get all the cards. It's just amazing. That's such a simple little side quest, little side thing, can be so much damn fun, and it really, really is. I can't think of another side game in any other video game that has actually entranced me so much. Not one. I like gambling in Dragon Warrior games. I like playing at the Gold Saucer in Final Fantasy VII, and there's probably a slew of other things in other games like that. But there's something about the card game in Final Fantasy IX, the fact that you can just walk up to some people and they're card players, and you don't know if they're a card player until you press that button, and they could have a badass deck, and you could be in trouble, you could lose your cards. And what's cool is, like, it has no effect on the real game. I think you can get items from, yeah, you can. There's, like, tournaments and stuff, and I think you can win items from it. But as far as, like, you can beat the game and never touch the card battle, like, pretty much at all. I don't think there is a required card battle at all. If there is, maybe it's just in the beginning for a tutorial. I don't really remember, but it's not really necessary, but it's definitely, in my opinion, one of the things that makes this such a great game. And like I said, just graphically and musically, it's an amazing game, and the story is really, really quite nice as well. It's just a departure from everything Final Fantasy was from 1 to 8, but in a good way, not in a bad way. It didn't stomp on every other game, and this one makes all the other Final Fantasies its bitch. It's also not the other way. It's not the worst game by a long shot. This is really a great game. And I know a lot of people just kind of turn their nose up at it. I'm not really sure why, but I definitely recommend it. I know I've mentioned it on my channel a couple of times. Now I'm going to stop talking about that game, and you guys cannot hear about Final Fantasy IX anymore until I decide to do an actual review with gameplay footage. I am still working on trying to get gameplay footage for this channel, and I'm really hoping to get it soon, because I think that that's what people want, especially because I know a couple people have asked about reviews on games. I don't want to do a review on a game without gameplay footage. I like doing things like this, memories, or like why I beat a game, or like just talk about a few games, but if I'm just going to be talking about one game and having your full attention, I really want to do it with gameplay footage available. So that's just me hopefully putting quality out over quantity. I could just talk about a game for 5 minutes, no problem. I can grab any game on the shelf because I've played them all, and, you know, say, hey, blah, 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 for 5 minutes and put out a video, but I don't want to. I'd rather be able to show you why this game is awesome, be able to hear why this game is awesome. Eventually, there will be reviews for this game, but in the meantime, I am done talking about it. That is all. So, let me know what you guys think of these games. Have any of you guys beaten them? What do you guys think of Final Fantasy IX? I know I already asked you what you thought of Minish Cap. I already know everybody loves Super Metroid, blah, blah, blah. If you hate it, let me know. If there's some reason you fucking hate Super Metroid, let me know. Or if you've never played it, let me know. I'm dying to know if you've never played it and then try it and think it's like the greatest game ever, or meh. But yeah, Final Fantasy IX and Minish Cap, let me know what you guys think of it. I think they're great games. That's all I have for you guys. Be sure to check out my Facebook channel. There is a little link if you go to the About section on my YouTube channel. There's a little link that says Nintenjoel on Facebook. You can just click on that, like it, and I share videos of other people that I like their videos, and I share cool like Lego video game mishmash pictures, and just all kinds of cool pictures, and try to start conversations on there. So go on there and check it out, and if you like the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos, go ahead and subscribe. That button is down there somewhere. And yeah, Happy New Year's. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night, and keep rocking the retro games.